Well, our next guest is running for Minnesota governor on the Republican side. Kendall Qualls joins us now. Kendall, good morning to you. Quite the announcement yesterday from the governor of your home state of Minnesota. What is your reaction to it and how you think this impacts the race?
Well, Carly, Todd, thank you so much for having me. I can't tell you who's celebrating more, Minnesotans or the people of Venezuela. I think there's a competition there going because of this resignation. I can tell you his tenure here, his 2 terms have been an absolute disaster. His first term will be known for letting the city of Minneapolis, one of the crown jewels of our city, big cities in the country, burn to the ground, and as well as the second term of this fraud case that we're seeing today. And over this whole time frame, the state has basically declined economically for 20 years, and most recently under his watch.
Well, as you might imagine, Tim Walz blames Republicans for all of this somehow. Let's take a listen.
Make no mistake about it. If Republicans continue down the path of abusing power, smearing entire communities, and running their own fraudulent game at the expense of Minnesotans, I will fight back with everything that I have. I am absolutely confident a Democratic and a DFLer will hold this seat come November.
Let's pick up where he left off. Why do you think that Tim Walz is wrong? Why do you think you especially can turn Minnesota red this November?
Yeah, let me give you and your viewers a kind of a snapshot, which is kind of hard to believe for some people outside the state of Minnesota. We are a centrist, pragmatic state, good, hardworking people. Unfortunately, in a Republican Party, we just haven't put forth a statewide candidate that would appeal to swing voters. We are a purple state. We have 8 congressional representatives in Congress, 4 Democrat, 4 that are Republican, and I am running as an outsider. I've never held public office. I've been in the business world for 30 years, leading sales and marketing teams in Fortune 100 companies. And before that, I served 5 years in the Army as an artillery officer. But even more than that, I love this country. I actually used to live in Harlem, New York as a kid during the worst of times. And I've seen what poverty looks like. I've tasted what poverty looks like. And then I lived part of my childhood again in a trailer park in Oklahoma. And what I've learned over the course of this time is that no matter where you start in life, you don't have to stay there for the rest of your life in this country. There's a pathway out.
And you won Minnesota's Republican Party straw poll recently, so I'm sure you're very happy about that. But there are concerns that there are so many Republican candidates in this race right now that it could complicate things. What is your reaction to that? And also separately, in the time we have remaining, would love to get your reaction on the fact that Amy Klobuchar could also be potentially jumping in on the Democrat side.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about my my competitors in the Republican Party. There are going to be other straw polls coming out soon, and we'll be probably weeding out a lot of those guys. And I'll be leading in those other straw polls as well. In regards to Amy Klobuchar, really what that represents is status quo at best. It's the past at worst. She's not going to do anything to change the policies that have put this state on a 20-year decline. What our ticket's about is the future, and the future of Minnesota is getting business, getting the fact that the business of Minnesota is actually getting back to business, and that's what we're going to focus on, the economic prosperity for this state.
And we can certainly expect that if you ultimately win in November, you will certainly keep a focus on this daycare scandal because the whole nation is talking about it. Minnesota gubernatorial candidate Kendall Qualls, thank you, and we wish you the very best of luck.
Good to meet you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And if I can, one quick website is kqformn.com.
There we go.
Thank you.
Understood. All right.
Now let's head out to St. Paul, Minnesota, where Alexis McAdams has more on that scandal. Good morning, Alexis.
Good morning. Well, it seems like as every day passes and the heat turns up from the White House here in Minnesota, there could be more indictments coming. So we're going to keep a close eye on it. Yesterday, Governor Tim Walz here in Minnesota said he was going to make an announcement. He then just really read from a piece of paper for about 7 minutes and then walked out before anyone could ask him a question. Watch.
If Republicans continue down the path of abusing power, smearing entire communities, and running their own fraudulent game at the expense of Minnesotans, I will fight back with everything that I have. Minnesota has always come first and always will. I'm focused on making sure that we stay America's best place to live and raise kids. No one will take that away from us.
But the White House tells me that Tim Walz should know that dropping out of the race for governor is not going to shield him from the consequences of his actions. So President Trump saying this week that Walz was caught red-handed for his role in the fraudulent Somali scams plaguing Minnesota for years. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said to Fox last night, President Trump believes Walz could be criminally liable.
President Trump has been calling out Tim Walz for his incompetence and corrupt leadership for a very long time. And Trump was right about everything. This is another example of that, which is why Governor Walz is dropping out of the race for re-election today. This is a man who can no longer even win the support of the voters within his home state because his policies have failed them.
And when you talk to voters here and people just in Minnesota, they talk about how long this scam has been going on for. So they want to know why no one took action quicker. The developments come as the Justice Department signals more indictments are on the horizon. 100 people have been charged and counting with felony fraud-related crimes since 2022. And nearly every single one of them is Somali. That's just according to the paperwork. So people push back on it. It's literally in the court documents. At least $9 billion in fraud and counting. Back out here live, we're trying to figure out exactly if Tim Walz is going to talk to the media today, what he's going to talk about. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions we can push him on. But just one last thing I want to hit home. Being in Minnesota, driving around, we're not just talking about daycare centers, according to the DOJ, autism centers, people for home health care, all of these scam businesses, according to the feds, that are set up. They ask for taxpayer money and then they pocket it. So this story is far from over. We'll see what happens.
But Alexis, almost all of it revolves around the Somali community, right?
Yeah. It does, yeah, and that's, you talk to voters here and people, they say, yeah, that's just part of it. There's a huge Somalian community here, but when you look at the court documents, Brian, it lists it. We're talking about 100 people that have been federally charged, and like 90 of them are Somalian. So how come when the Somalians come to Minnesota, I was asking the state rep, why'd they figure out how to scam the system? And they said they're looking into that too. Who helps them? Who gives them the information? So there's so much information that's probably going to come out.
It's incredible.
All right,
great job, Alexis.
Gosh,
So
she put it the best way I've heard. They take money from taxpayers and they just pocket it.
Yeah.
Right, and taking advantage of the people that need it most. People you would think need health care, daycare, and have special needs like autism. So Nick Shirley, one of the things he did in his 42-minute video is go to these different health care companies. Yeah. He didn't just go to the daycare centers. He actually went to healthcare companies, too. They were all shell companies, one of which said the Leering Center, and they've since fixed the sign. And they said they suddenly have kids, but their hours are only 2 to 6. Yeah.
They don't have the N in the word.
Right. So he has another tape coming out. I think it's going to drop later today that's going to show it's even bigger than Minnesota.
So this was one of the learning centers that got money, taxpayer money, from the government and is involved in this fraud scam. All right, here he is. Here's Nick.
Quality Leering Center. This is the meme that has gone totally viral. And I mean, clearly it's because of the hypocrisy. You have a daycare that's receiving millions of dollars of taxpayer funds, federal funds, and they can't even spell learning right.
And what you don't see, what you actually do see, is they also spelt the address wrong. They spelt Nicolette wrong as well. They spelt learning and Nicolette wrong on their sign.
Yeah, not a good track record.
Their logic has been literally broken. And if you ask them, well, you're supporting $1.9 million going to this daycare and they can't even spell learning right, she just looks you stone cold in the face and has no response because she knows she can't justify it. But she has to keep yelling just to keep going to convince herself that she's doing the right thing.
So what did they spend the millions on? Do y'all think it's crazy that a daycare would get millions, plural?
Millions, and then you couldn't find the kids. And I'm sorry, I just can't get over this. A learning center from 2 to 10 o'clock?
Right.
I mean, it's been a while since I was in childcare, but I don't remember us being at a childcare from 2 to 10.
And one of the things he did is said, I have a son that wants to get in there. His name is Joey. And they go, no, this is not for Joey.
Right.
Really? It's not for a kid.
Wait,
and by the way, I'd love to see the qualifications of the people that actually answered. Do you have any experience with these kids? Bring me through a day with a 2-year-old. Tell me how you'd handle that.
So I didn't hear about that part of the story. What do you mean from 2 to 10? Like you drop them off at 2 in the afternoon?
That's their opening hours. Is between
2 in the afternoon?
2 in the afternoon.
And they
Until
accused
10 at night?
Nick of going there on off hours.
Right.
Got it.
At 11. That's what they said. So the Riley Gaines Show will drop tomorrow. It'll be the first, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So that'll be good. And Nick has more out that shows that That's why it's more bigger than Minnesota.
Good for Nick. Look, the younger generation. Look what he's doing.
And his dad
Good
has
for
been
him.
helping him out there.
So Elon Musk said, by the way, that there's fraud in California, New York, Illinois, more than Minnesota. He said he found that out when he was doing Doge.
Unbelievable. And all these people want to be president.
Any minute now, Minnesota Democratic Governor Tim Walz will answer questions about his decision to end his re-election campaign. He broke the news yesterday after weeks of the feds turning the screws on his state in the wake of a multi-billion-dollar fraud scheme. He claims he's been hard at work addressing the fraud since it was discovered years ago, prompting critics to ask if he was trying to stop it, then how did it spiral out of control? The Washington Post editorial board writing this: Walz has insisted that he was focused all along on cleaning up fraud. If that's true, he's really bad at cleaning up fraud because the problem exploded under his governorship. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno here with my co-host, Harris Faulkner. And also joining us today, Rosanna Scotto, Fox 5 New York anchor and host of the Underground Economy on Fox Nation, Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst, and Paul Morrow, attorney, retired NYPD inspector, and Fox News contributor. Now, Governor Walz blamed Republicans for the situation yesterday. Watch.
If Republicans continue down the path of abusing power, smearing entire communities, and running their own fraudulent game at the expense of Minnesotans, I will fight back with everything that I have. Minnesota has always come first and always will. I'm focused on making sure that we stay America's best place to live and raise kids. No one will take that away from us.
But White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says Trump believes Walz could be criminally liable.
President Trump has been calling out Tim Walz for his incompetence and corrupt leadership for a very long time. And Trump was right about everything. This is another example of that, which is why Governor Walz is dropping out of the race for re-election today. This is a man who can no longer even win the support of the voters within his home state because his policies have failed them.
Now, welfare fraud isn't just a problem in Minnesota. It's been thrust into the national spotlight. A former WWE wrestler has been indicted in the Mississippi welfare fraud scandal, accused of embezzling almost $4 million in state welfare funds. The case is part of a much larger fraud investigation. The Trump administration is sending a clear message aimed at stopping similar schemes, freezing $10 billion in funding to 5 blue states over fears of childcare and social services fraud. Paul Morrow, a lot to unpack. My question to start out with you is, have we seen the worst of it, or is the worst yet to come?
Worse is yet to come, because once you get into the discovery, you start pulling all the paperwork and so on, you start to see what really went on, and it's always ugly when you see how the sausage was made. Let's make a couple of distinctions here. First of all, my understanding is right now 16 federal investigations ongoing, including some that were begun well before this story broke, all right? Let's make this distinction relative to Minnesota. If you look at who's been investigating, and I want to be fair here, the DOJ under Biden was investigating this. In fact, the U.S. Attorney for Minnesota came out and said at one point, we have a fraud problem here in Minnesota. What's the distinction? Well, the feds were investigating. Who was not investigating? The state, the people that were closest to it, who should have had a better window into it. Walz, Keith Ellison, the Attorney General. The Attorney Generals love to say, I'm the top law enforcement agent in my state. But when it comes to law enforcement, they don't do anything. Why was the state complicit or incompetent when the feds actually went at it? Because the state were the people who had the most to gain, because they wanted the Somali votes. So as a result, they let all of this happen, again, either complicit or incompetent. Walz, the only way he's going to be criminally liable, in my estimation, is if you see somehow or other he got some sort of a donation because he looked the other way. Otherwise, it's going to be tough to bring criminal charges. You're going to have an intent issue. But Ellison met with the Feeding Our Future people. They were not to be indicted yet, but they were under investigation. And he let that skate. He said, I'm siding with you guys. They were later indicted. And by the way, he got, I think it's $15,000 to $20,000 donations from that group in the subsequent 2 weeks, including money that went to his son, who was running for the assembly up there, the local, assembly that governs St. Paul, Minneapolis. My point is, when you start to see that sort of tit for tat, it's an allegation. That's all it is. That has to be looked at. I spoke to Bill Glahn, who is a fellow at the Center for the American Experiment in Minnesota. He worked for Palenti. He had a window. He's the guy who found the audio tape There's an audio tape of that meeting, and he put it out. Nobody else was interested. I had him on my podcast. I don't do this too much when I talk about it, the ops desk. I'm going to drop it this week. He laid it all out. Ellison's got trouble.
I think part of the reason, Harris, that everything is so shocking, too, is because of how obvious it was and how now as we're learning how much whistleblowing was being ignored. We have a shot we'll play for you right now. It's Nick Shirley calling out the hypocrisy of the so-called learning centers. They can't even get the title right. Let's watch.
Quality Learning Center. This is the meme that has gone totally viral. And I mean, clearly it's because of the hypocrisy. You have a daycare that's receiving millions of dollars of taxpayer funds, federal funds, and they can't even spell learning right.
Their logic has been literally broken. And if you ask them, well, you're supporting $1.9 million going to this daycare and they can't even spell learning right, she just looks you stone cold in the face and has no response because she knows she can't justify it, but she has to keep yelling just to keep going to convince herself that she's doing the right thing.
And you can catch that full episode tomorrow with Riley Gaines' new podcast. But Harris, he's absolutely right. It's egregious.
Okay, it's also everywhere. For some reason, my 16-year-old's algorithms brought up that on the tail end of our vacation. She said, Mom, those people where you used to work and cover them on the news when they were breaking the law in Minnesota can't spell learning. I'm like, where are you getting this from? No, it's everywhere. And because it is, what you said is so right. So Chairman Comer of the House Oversight last hour told me that their focus is on Keith Ellison.
Oh, did he say that?
Yeah, he said that. And I then said, well, Walz can run, but he can't take everybody with him. Right, because he can't protect any of the people who are left behind. But apparently there is so much going on with that trail with Ellison and others as well in that state that Comer feels like this could go on for quite some time. And their focus from a congressional standpoint will be clawing back some of the money. I mean, people were ripped off so much. Is any of it still gettable? So that will be part of it. But yeah, this whole part about the ineptitude and how sloppy they were, and are the papers out there? Did somebody take them? Can we get any of the... You've got it on tape, and I didn't know you had a podcast, but I'm watching it and listening.
It was really revelatory, I tell you. And by the way,
Your podcast, no doubt.
A lot of the money crypto. They knew how to hide it.
Oh, right, of course.
Yeah, Glenn told me that as well.
Wow. But Congress is on it.
But here's the thing politically. Governor Tim Walz got fried under the national spotlight. Because I've worked in statewide campaigns in a lot of these states, particularly if you look at some of these, left-leaning purple states, and you think the mainstream media is bad when it comes to bias. Get to some of these more liberal states and particularly liberal media markets like the Minneapolis, St. Paul area media market in the state of Minnesota. They protect the liberal governor there. So Governor Walz has been protected. I mean, a lot of these audits were flagged predating Governor Walz's time as governor. But as soon as Kamala Harris picked him as the VP, that was the demise and the end of his political career, because what also came under scrutiny was his handling of the George Floyd riots. The fact that there was $500 million worth of damage in the state of Minnesota. You have 1,500 properties damaged, that he allowed a police precinct to be overrun. His stolen valor, all those different things that he had lied about as well. And then now this fraud scandal as well. So this was the demise, the national spotlight, when people started paying attention to what he was doing. Also, we're talking about different buckets of fraud as well. You've got the Feeding Our Future fraud. You've got the Medicaid fraud, the housing fraud, the child care fraud. So I think this, his decision to not run for re-election, clearly legal culpability there. And then just realizing that this is the end of the road for him as this continues.
Rosanna, what do you
I was just thinking Minneapolis has hit after hit coming after it. I mean, now the Wall Street Journal is talking about what happened with ICE agents, right?
That's right.
The President of the United States talking about now sending in ICE agents to do a little bit more investigative work. And then you find out this hotel in Lakeville decides that on their own, they're not going to allow the ICE agents to stay there. They have documentation. They share it with everybody. Hilton is now coming out with a statement saying, hey, this is a franchise. It's not us. But, the bottom line is...
their franchise.
It's their franchise. And usually those people are groomed. There is somebody over them to kind of keep an eye on how things go. It's their name. And I'm in the hospitality business. Besides being a news person on here and on Good Day New York, my family has a restaurant. And hospitality, I mean, you can't, decide who's coming in your place
mean
and
discriminate?
who's not. Discriminate against somebody who's coming in your place. Hospitality is hospitality. Now they're saying they're blaming it on one person in the front who decided to go rogue and not let these people in. But the bottom line is the Hilton chain, because social media is all over this, going to have a Bud Light problem? You know, how do they get around this? I mean, Minneapolis has really got one problem after another.
Well, you know what? One thing relative to the hotel, no violence, all right? We are not the people who burn down Tesla dealerships, all right? So that thing is identified. People are very mad. Be adults.
The family staying in those hotels. Can I just have 1 second?
Yeah, please.
Paul? So with this idea, and I kicked out the word discrimination. I know with businesses, if you put a sign up, somehow that can indemnify you from something. But who wants to put up a sign that says we don't want to support federal workers in this environment?
Right.
I don't know. What's your take?
Somebody's going to get fired here. They're going to blame it on some rogue employee who sent out that email, and somebody will go and they'll back off of it. If it was an institutional decision, which I don't assess from Hilton, they're going to push it over to the franchise, and I have a feeling that place is going to be called something different soon.
Well, that was President Trump wrapping up his remarks to House Republicans at a retreat at the Trump Kennedy Center. He is working with them to map out the year ahead. That's the baseline. The top line in all of this is, if they don't win the midterm elections, this president says Democrats will impeach him. That's got to be a line of the day. Now, he did get into other things, and we will this hour as well. Venezuela and what's going to happen with the then Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, now the official president of Venezuela. Like, what things will the United States be asking of her? We'll get into all of it. For now, let's start with where the president did. House Oversight Chairman James Comer, Republican from the Commonwealth of Kentucky, is with me now. Good to see you, and Happy New Year. Look, that was a directive of epic proportions. He called it his roadmap to victory in the fall. Your first reaction from a leader in the House to, if the Republicans do not win the midterm elections, if you don't have a majority in the House, if you don't have a majority in the Senate, this president will be impeached. Your reaction?
Well, that's true. I mean, the Democrats have a track record of unfairly impeaching Donald Trump. The one thing that Democrats are united on is their hatred of Donald Trump. They don't really have a platform that they all agree on. They're everywhere from socialists to moderate Democrats. The one thing every Democrat in the United States Congress agrees on is they hate Donald Trump. So that is a fact. I agree with what the president said. That's unfortunate that if the House flipped, the Democrats won't be talking about trying to pass an agenda for working men and women, or try to improve the education system in America, or try to reduce crime. Their one rally point this whole election cycle will be, let's impeach Donald Trump. Of course, he'll never get convicted in the Senate, so the Democrats are just going to feed red meat to their base and not accomplish anything. Hopefully, the Republicans will demonstrate to the American people over the next 12 months that we can govern, and we have policies that'll work for the average working men and women in America.
Yeah, he hit policy pretty hard in all of this. Democrats, as you say, have been boasting that they can win back, particularly the House majority. And what he gave as the litmus test here is health care. And he says it looks like they will stick together. Will Republicans stick together on something that can not only avoid a potential other bump in the road later this month as you revisit having to fund the government, but also on health care? That's a sticking point, and it became really, really obvious with the president hitting it so much.
Well, I think he's right. It's a huge issue in America. Everyone's concerned about rising healthcare prices. I think that we can unite by a plan, but we're going to have a plan. I know the president talked about giving more money back to the American people. That's a hallmark of republicanism. So we certainly support that. But I think there are different ideas that many of us have on how we can reduce healthcare costs. Certainly, I've been a huge proponent of reforming the PBMs, the pharmacy benefit managers. I think they add a significant increase to the cost of prescription drugs. There are things like that that we can do in Congress legislatively that I believe will reduce the cost of health care. So hopefully we'll be successful over the next few months in passing different types of health care bills that'll reduce the cost of health care. I don't think there's one big silver shining bullet that will pass that's going to magically reduce health care, but I think there are a series of things like going after the pharmaceutical companies and the pharmacy benefit managers that I think will reduce healthcare costs.
Wow, so much to get to. I want to get your take on this. The committee that you chair, House Oversight, is set to begin hearings tomorrow on the massive fraud scandal in Minnesota. They've invited Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to testify next month. A statement from his office signaled that that's not likely going to happen. Yesterday, Walz announced he is not going to seek a third term as governor of Minnesota. This is how he ended that announcement.
I'm passing on this race with zero sadness and zero regret. I'm proud of the way we treat our neighbors. I'm proud of the way that we welcome people to this state. No one's taking this away from us. Not the fraudsters, certainly not this president, not on my watch. Tomorrow, I'll be back with you. I'll give you an update on America's best paid family medical leave program that is now a week into it. And at that time, I'll take all your questions. Thank you all.
So no questions there. President Trump reacted with this post. He was caught red-handed. I feel certain the facts will come out and they will reveal a seriously unscrupulous and rich group of slime balls. Governor Walz has destroyed the state of Minnesota. No one is above the law. All that from the president. And this, that last is a nod to the mantra Democrats have been using against Trump. Watch.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one's above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one. No one is above the law.
Chairman Comer, your reaction.
Well, look, I think by Governor Walz abruptly resigning or dropping out of the governor's race, I think that is an admission of guilt to the average American. He's going to be given due process. We do expect him to be in the House Oversight Committee. He will receive a subpoena. We've invited him to attend. We're following the normal process for issuing a subpoena, one which will win in court. I expect him to be there. He knows the rules of Congress. He was in Congress. We not only expect Tim Walz to be there, we also expect Keith Ellison, because the reports we're getting from whistleblowers in Minnesota, they have both been warned numerous times over many years about these massive amounts of fraud to the tune of billions and billions of dollars in Minnesota. And yet they chose to turn a blind eye. So they're going to have to answer for that. They're going to get their day in front of the American people in the House Oversight Committee. So I expect them to be there. But it's ironic that when Walz is announcing that he's dropping out of the governor's race, he tries to blame it on Republicans or the conservative media. But then he closes by saying he's going to start another government welfare program in Minnesota. Does anyone in America have confidence that Tim Walz can create another government program in Minnesota that won't be susceptible to fraud? I don't think so. So I think the president has announced he's withholding federal funds in Minnesota until they demonstrate that they are appropriating those federal funds in a manner that I think would be sufficient to every American taxpayer and every Minnesota taxpayer. So there's a lot of work being done in Congress and by the president and his administration to rein in Minnesota, to hold them accountable, and to make sure that tax dollars are being spent wisely.
Whew. I mean, I whittled that down to you saying Walz can run, but he can't take everybody with him.
That's right.
He's got some people behind, and this case is not over. Chairman, great to have you in the program today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, moments ago, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz saying that he is responsible for any fraud that happens in his state at a news conference about Minnesota's paid family and medical leave program.
The buck stops with me on this, and that is absolutely true, but I want to be very clear on this too. If the buck stops with me on when there's problems, the buck stops with me on successes.
Walz is facing growing calls to resign over the scandal in his state, a day after he announced he was dropping his re-election campaign. Alexis McAdams is live. She's been watching all of this from Minnesota. She's in St. Paul with more. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, John. It's cold here in Minnesota, but the White House is trying to turn up the heat here on Governor Tim Walz as they're looking into lots of allegations of fraud across the state. Yesterday, Tim Walz said he was going to take questions. He ended up just kind of reading a statement about why he was not going to run for re-election. But it comes as Republicans in D.C., John, say they have worked on a subpoena and they want Walz to come testify about what he knew and when he knew it about the fraud.
I think by Governor Walz abruptly resigning or dropping out of the governor's race, I think that is an admission of guilt to the average American. He's going to be given due process. We do expect him to be in the House Oversight Committee. He will receive a subpoena. We've invited him to attend. We're following the normal process for issuing a subpoena, one which will win in court.
So Governor Walz dropped his re-election bid yesterday. Today he took some questions at a press conference that just wrapped up. He told the press that he should also get credit for the good things he's done in the state of Minnesota, not just the blame, but that's just not how it works sometimes in politics, right, John? So he's also calling himself the most transparent governor in Minnesota's history, saying he held more press conferences, rather, than anybody who had the job before him. The main thing he wanted to get across to the media was that President Trump is trying to weaponize these fraud cases, and then said he talked to his family about it, and they decided this wasn't for him right now. President Trump says Walz was caught, quote, red-handed for his role in the fraudulent Somali scams across Minnesota, and Walz is not the only Democrat politician that the feds are looking into.
This is a concerted effort to try and destroy the president's opponents, to destroy the rule of law, and it became apparent to me that he was going to do that with me being there, and I just feel, along with my family, that it's the best decision for Minnesota, and I feel very confident in that. I think it's going to be clear that Minnesotans agree with that.
Okay, so Walz won't run for re-election, but is that enough? Some people are still calling here, critics, John, that he should just resign right now. Sources also telling Fox that Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison is under scrutiny here in the state, as a newly resurfaced leaked audio clip from back in 2021 had Ellison on tape vowing to support a group, including now convicted defendants in a Somali fraud case. So this really kind of runs deep here in Minnesota. The Justice Department signaling more indictments are coming. Almost 100 people have been charged with felony fraud-related crimes since 2022, and nearly every single one of those people is Somali. So that's why we talk about the Somali community. At least $9 billion in fraud and counting here in Minneapolis and Minnesota area. Back out here live, Tim Walz is still going to keep getting those questions here, and this investigation is far from over. So we'll have to see if he shows up there where you are, John, in D.C.
All right, $9 billion in fraud. We'll see if he can hang in.
I know.
All right, Alexis McAdams for us. Alexis, thank you. Sandra?
John Mark Johnson is Minnesota's Republican Senate Minority Leader and joins us now. Welcome to you, Minority Leader. What is your message following Tim Walz's words there? Where is this going next?
Yeah, so the governor, by saying he's not going to be running for governor again in the next term, I mean, that does nothing. It changes nothing. He has not taken the accountability for what's going on within the agencies. If the buck really stops there, he needs to make sure he's taking the bold steps of taking those folks who are responsible within his agency, doing the firings, holding people accountable. But for 8 years now, we have not seen him hold one person accountable in Minnesota state government. He could have done this early on. He could have held people accountable early on, and we would have saved taxpayers billions of dollars in this state. So he really needs to take hold of this situation real quick.
It's a stunning downfall for a man who is pretty close to the national stage just not so long ago.
Yeah, he reminds you of Icarus, right? He flew a little too close to the sun there and exposed his big weaknesses. Minnesota has known that this stuff has been going on under the radar. Unfortunately, the media here in the state of Minnesota wouldn't report on that. It took a national spotlight to really bring these issues up. And all of a sudden, we had federal cases prosecuting the fraud going on here. We've had the ability to get the message out, especially in the last month. And that has really clipped his wings and now exposed him for what he is.
Okay, love the Minnesota accent there, by the way. This is a bit from Governor Walz just a few moments ago when he was speaking. Listen.
This is a decision that I make and make with my family. And certainly, I think, as I said, it's the right decision. I'll note, I think it's appropriate we're here today. The war that's being waged against Minnesota, you're seeing it. We have a ridiculous surge of apparently 2,000 people not coordinating with us that are for a show of the cameras.
It still seems like he's blaming others for his downfall. This is Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, calling him out as he's speaking about the probe there. Listen.
This is a man who can no longer even win the support of the voters within his home state because his policies have failed them. So this is all hands on deck, rest assured. It's a top priority for President Trump. And he believes that Governor Walz is criminally liable. And I think the Department of Justice is going to find out.
A final thought on that, Mr. Leader?
Yeah, so I mean, whether he's criminally liable or not, I mean, if he was a CEO of a private company, he would have been gone a long time ago. By him just saying, I'm not going to run for re-election, does not mean he's taking the responsibility for this issue right now. It's what we're going to see is he's going to step away, and we're going to have another Democrat move into this position. But unless we take the bold steps of getting new leadership, Republican leadership in this state that can take on the public sector unions, that can reformat what this bureaucracy is in Minnesota, what he has created is a system that's just ripe for fraud.
Final question on another happening in your state, and that is Hilton, a big brand in full PR, full damage control mode. After ICE and DHS agents, this began yesterday, started releasing these screenshots allegedly showing that a Hampton Inn, Hilton owned in Lakeville, Minnesota, started canceling reservations for federal agents to stay at their hotels. This has now sparked calls for boycotts and beyond. The alleged email reads, after further investigation online, we found information about immigration work connected with your name and we'll be canceling your upcoming reservation. You should see a proper cancellation email in your inbox shortly from Hilton. Hilton gets word of this and said, oh, that's an independently owned hotel. We'll reach out to them. This doesn't stand for our brand. They posted this on X. The independent hotel owner had assured us that they had fixed this problem and published a message confirming this. A recent video clearly raises concerns that they're not meeting our standards and values. Where is this controversy in your state right now?
Well, I mean, this is a culture that the activists on the Democrat side have really tried to stir up. They tried to push through bills that would create a sanctuary state that doesn't allow Minnesota law enforcement and others to be working with our ICE agents, to be working on immigration law that this country has passed. And so it's a cultural activist approach to that has seeped into some of our private sector. And you see that there with the independent franchisee of the Hilton property. So hopefully this is something that, as President Trump has that authentic leadership, he comes into the state, does the work that our Congress has passed the laws for him to enforce. We're going to see things change in this state, and I hope that with this governor, not running for re-election, hopefully stepping down at some point, we're going to see a cultural change in Minnesota that brings us back to common sense again.
A lot going on in that state for sure. I rode the elevator with our very own Minnesotan Brian Bremberg here in the building today, so I've gotten my dose. Thank you so much, Mr. Leader. Thank you for joining us. All right.
Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz taking questions a little while ago about the end of his re-election campaign. When asked about the growing calls for him to step down now, Walz remained defiant.
Republicans want to tell you everybody with brown skin is stealing money or that they're not welcome here. Their idea of improving this state is being a parrot for Donald Trump, agreeing to everything that he agreed with. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. It ain't happening. I'm not going anywhere. And you can make all your requests for me to resign over my dead body. The question that I think they need to decide is when did the guy in the White House resign?
Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security is reportedly sending 2,000 more ICE agents in and around Minneapolis, joking on X, wishing the city good morning. Let's bring in Minnesota State House Speaker Lisa Demuth for more on this. And Madam Speaker, thanks for being with us.
Well, good afternoon.
I was going to say, to hear Tim Walz tell it, this is an awful lot about Donald Trump and not a whole lot about the corruption and fraud right under his schnozola during his administration.
And John, that's what we've been hearing all along with Governor Walz, is the blame or the distraction of always putting things on President Trump is what he deflects to all the time. The fact here in Minnesota is that we have record fraud under the Walz administration. There was an $18 billion surplus that was completely spent, $10 billion raised in taxes and fees. Only half of our kids can read at grade level, and Governor Walz needs to take the full responsibility that this has happened under his time as governor of the state of Minnesota.
So President Trump disagrees with the governor. He believes that he may have to step down at some point. The president posting this on Truth Social said Minnesota's corrupt governor will possibly leave office before his term is up, but in any event will not be running again because he was caught red-handed along with Ilhan Omar and others of his Somali friends, stealing tens of billions of taxpayer dollars. I feel certain the facts will come out and they will reveal a seriously unscrupulous and rich group of slimeballs. Now, nothing to suggest at this point that Governor Walz was in any way involved in the fraud, but I mean, certainly it would seem as though if he was completely ignorant of it, that's one thing, but it's quite another if he sort of knew that it might be happening and turned a blind eye to it. Which do you think is truth?
You know, whether he knew that it was going on and didn't pay attention or didn't try to stop it, or if he truly was focused on other things and didn't know that the fraud was happening in Minnesota, either way, it is a failure of the top leader of our state. The best step that Governor Walz made was yesterday announcing that he wasn't going to be seeking the third term. It was a little bit surprising when he had announced that he was going to seek a third term back in September, but at least he's admitted that he's not been good for the state and he should no longer continue. The important thing to recognize, though, is whoever they put in to run for governor in the state of Minnesota, any Democrat has completely supported what Governor Walz has done, and it would be more of the same. That's why we need a change here in the state of Minnesota. That is why I'm running for governor.
Yeah, in terms of who the Democrats might put up instead of Tim Walz, since he has now said that he's not going to stand for re-election, it looks like Amy Klobuchar, the senator, has got the inside track. A lot of her supporters believe that she would just cruise to election. How do you, as the Republican candidate for governor, beat her?
I will beat whoever they put up, whether it's Senator Klobuchar or someone else. I will be able to beat any Democrat for governor here in the state of Minnesota because they all have been complicit and supportive of what Governor Walz has done to our state. The spending of the $18 billion surplus, raising our taxes and fees. We are headed toward a financial deficit in the state, and no Democrat, whether they serve in Washington or serve here in the state of Minnesota, no Minnesota Democrat has said anything about fraud and the fact that this has happened under Governor Walz, and he should take responsibility. It would just be a Tim Walz third term is all it's going to be if it's a Democrat.
I mean, even so, there hasn't been a Republican who's won statewide office in Minnesota since 2006. So would you acknowledge it's a big hill to climb?
It is a very big hill to climb. I'm up for the challenge. I am the only candidate, including Governor Walz, until yesterday, that has even announced that I have a running mate, Ryan Wilson. I've got a ticket that is ready to go. We are working on policy plans and the things that need to be done to make Minnesota more affordable, to make sure that Minnesota has an economy that businesses can grow and thrive and families can afford their lives. That's the work we're doing on the campaign trail so that we are ready to lead day one when elected as governor.
Well, start by getting to the bottom of all the fraud that's gone on there.
Absolutely.
That would be a plus as well. Speaker Damon, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
All right, Sandra?
John, the red state's winning big as blue city policies push business out. That is next.
That's Jennifer Larson, who founded the Holland Center in 2004 after her son was diagnosed with autism, speaking with Nick Sorter and Dustin Grage, and she joins me now. Thank you so much for being with me. Let's talk, Jennifer, about what's happened here. You, by all accounts, have a very legitimate clinic in Minneapolis, but now you're under threat.
Yes, thanks for having me. Yeah, we are under great threat, and so are all the other providers. It's not just me. All the legitimate providers who have provided longstanding, ethical, responsible service with thin margins to children in Minnesota for decades are at the risk of being shut down because this policy is a blanket freeze and we can't make our payrolls.
Well, as you were conducting, I'm curious, Jennifer, in the industry, in the market, in the community, a legitimate autism clinic, I'm curious, were you or other providers aware? Did you hear stories of what was going on in these illegitimate clinics? Were you sounding the alarm bell? I'm just curious if this at all was something that within the clinics and the autism service providers, whether or not this entire fraud scheme was starting to be something that was honestly incapable of being ignored.
Yes, it was incapable of being ignored. At first, I thought because the Somali community does have quite a few affected kids, that it was a great effort from their community to start up small clinics and care for their children, because I have a waiting list of 5 years, and I certainly can't take all their children. And I do service quite a few Somali children. And at one point, we went and looked at a few of their clinics. My staff did, not me personally. And we decided we didn't want to affiliate with them. And I got written up in a blog as being racist.
Really?
So anytime you go out and yes, and that was years ago. That was a few years ago. Anytime it's a fear of every Minnesotan. We are good, honest, hardworking people, and we don't want to be called racist because we're not. I mean, for the most part, Minnesota's a beautiful, wonderful place, and Minnesota Nice is actually pretty accurate in that respect. But it is a fear of Minnesotans that if you go up against the Somalis, you're immediately racist.
And so, therefore, you have to tolerate fraud, which seems to be, at least at a minimum, the motivation for many people involved, from politicians to others, in overlooking what was something that amounted to nothing less than theft. I'm curious, Jennifer, as you look at this and the way this fraud has pervaded not just the state of Minnesota, but your particular charity, your particular clinic, and now you have your funds frozen. Who do you blame?
I blame the administration and Governor Walz. They turned a blind eye. There is no possible way this could have happened unless they let it happen. All of us who've been in business get spot audits on site every year where they come in, the state does, and says, I want to see these files for these children for this time. Every year. And you have to pass these audits. There's crossing the T's, dotting the I's, the scrutiny that we're under to be perfect. And somehow they didn't know that these clinics didn't have working phone numbers or kids. Clearly, they weren't getting audits on site. I don't think you need AI or Nick Shirley to go around and figure it out. If they would have just stopped by the way they do my clinics, they would have seen it.
And last question, Jennifer, as we have mentioned, your clinic is under threat right now with the freezing of funds that are necessary for your clinic. And you blame the administration. You blame Governor Walz. Is simply not seeking re-election enough? What kind of accountability do you want to see for the political figures of Minnesota?
I think all of Minnesota is so tired of people not being held accountable. Stepping down is just, it's his way out. This is so ugly and so widespread, and he was so complicit, in my opinion, of course. But I'm more worried about the 30,000 to 40,000 children if they don't pull this back, this prepayment review, and pay us, that are going to be left, innocent children that are going to be left with no services. The schools can't take them. The schools were the people who said, we can't take you, and discharged them. They'll have nowhere to go. Moms and dads, somebody's going to have to stop working and stay home with these children. Whatever happens to Governor Walz, just leave. And if that's what it takes, just leave. But I am the most worried about these families who are going to pay for the fraud that was allowed to happen. Innocent children, staff like mine, and families.
Yeah. That's the price for allowing theft and fraud like this to take place on such a massive scale. We hope that you're not part of that cost. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Jennifer Larson.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz lashing out at President Trump as he faced the press just a day after announcing that he won't seek re-election for a third term, amid growing fallout from a massive welfare fraud scandal.
Have I been perfect in this? God dang no. I wasn't perfect as a teacher. I wasn't perfect as a coach. I wasn't perfect as a soldier, but I was pretty damn good at all those things. Game's over for him now. It was all me. I was the bad guy or whatever. Well, put up or shut up now and tell us what you're going to do to make this state better. Answer these tough questions. Quit hiding behind this and expect for the next 11 months for me to ride you like you've never been ridden, to make sure that you're doing your job. I'm not going anywhere. And you can make all your requests for me to resign over my dead body. Will that happen? I will fight this thing till the very end to make this state better. And the question that I think they need to decide is when did the guy in the White House resign? Anytime I get drug into being next to Donald Trump, God help me, I don't want to be judged against that guy.
And Axios is pointing out Walz's falls from grace. Alex Thompson says 14 months ago, Walz almost became VP and then flirted with a 2028 run. Now Walz is ending his political career amid scandal, personal burnout, and feuds with former allies, including Kamala Harris. Greg, he made some threats there.
He's threatened to ride me.
Like you've never been
like I've never been ridden. Oh, man, Tampon Tim is seeing red. You know what the biggest achievement is for him?
electing Trump. Imagine if Kamala had chosen Josh Shapiro or Harold Ford. Instead, he took that slot and steered that ticket into the sea. And I credit him for his honesty. Remember when he said most white men commit crimes? I think he was talking about himself. I think he realizes he's in trouble. And when, and honestly, he is lucky if this is all that happens.
Right.
When we look at the debt, which is what, $38 trillion, we always talk about spending. But I think what we're finding out that the spending question might be a distraction from the corruption question. If it comes to a point where it's over $1 trillion, $2 trillion, it's not about spending. It's about the fact that we were so focused on spending, they were just stealing our money. And then they say, oh, we're in debt. They can raise our taxes, and in California, seize assets, claiming every dime is sacred. And I think this has opened the door. I think Nick, what's his name? Shirley. Don't call me Shirley. These guys and Musk, they've opened the door to something that we haven't really looked at in a while. Shirley says he's being hunted, and I would take that claim very seriously. When you think about Trump getting shot, almost assassinated twice, Charlie Kirk, Elon Musk being targeted, his dealerships, the cars, January 6er grandmothers, parents, Christians, white dudes at work like Jesse, who's been turned down from so many promotions because of your skin color. You don't think people want Nick Shirley dead? I mean, let's be honest. Like, we're in a new world where there is an active campaign to go after the people who are threatening those who corrupt this country.
And from the beginning of this scandal, his message has gone, Jesse, from I've got this fraud under control to it's actually President Trump's fault.
Right. Yeah, no, Greg's right. I wanted a job at Fox Noticias.
Yes.
And I was denied. I'm going to file a suit. Yeah, ride you like you've never been ridden before. Somewhere Mayor Pete's like, I'm too gay? Dana, I've always said stupid is more dangerous than evil, and he is a perfect example. The DNC brass casted this guy as this dumb, aw shucks, white knucklehead that just bumbles around, pretends to work on cars and hunt ducks. Meanwhile, he's so asleep at the switch, everyone's backing up the Brinks truck and just looting the Treasury. But that's what Democrats want. They want dumb people in charge so their interest groups can steal from you. That's the whole problem. Greg's right. It's not a spending problem. This country is the richest country in the world, and we're in debt up to our eyebrows. And I got big eyebrows.
Bushy.
The Democrats want substitute teachers in charge, right? Remember, these people come in one day a year and all hell breaks loose because no one respects them. They want weak men and women running the show so they can steal everything from the taxpayer. And this is what they did with Joe Biden. You know what Joe Biden did? And I don't even know he did this. They stopped checking daycare centers to see if anybody was there for the last year. And they gave these people $19 billion. $19 billion went out the door, and there was no checking to see if there's any even kids there. That's why Caroline Levitt said on my show last night, Harold, you'd know this, if you were watching, that the DOJ is investigating Walz and all these people, and people are under indictment, and we don't even know about it yet.
Harold, how damaging is this writ large? I mean, do you think it's bigger than Tim Walz in Minnesota? Yeah, I do.
I think it happens. I think this kind of mismanagement of funds, if not stealing of funds, happens in states across the country. I think that this story here, as I shared yesterday, I think you let the chips fall where they may. I think there's a little bit of politics here, but the politics are completely overwhelmed by where it looks like the facts are taking us. So I hope that the young man that helped expose this, I hope he gets out across the country. I hope he doesn't just go to Democrat states, go to all the states. I think we will find COVID dollars having been mismanaged from California to Maine, unfortunately. Now, I don't think that I agree with Greg in a huge regard around what the impulse of Musk's efforts to find overspending, excessive spending, redundancies in government. I hope they continue to do that. The thing that got all the attention was the closing of the USAID. But we've yet to really talk about some of these other things, and this is one of them that should be talked about.
Kennedy?
spending and corruption go hand in hand. You know, Greg brings that up, but whenever you have that kind of taxation and that kind of spending, that's what it's there for. I mean, it is designed by socialists as a taking in order to enrich their cronies. And that's what they've done. They've done that here in Minnesota.
Can I add something? It's because they put names on it, and they use language to make you think that it's for good reasons.
Yeah, that they care. That they care about people, because you look at the potential softest targets for corruption. I mean, there's nothing softer than feeding the hungry and taking care of children in need. It's like, of course people want to do that. And you have a lot of naive do-gooders in this country who want to help people who truly need it. But, you know, it's like homeless people, kids without parents, and meals, like, they can all be damned as long as, you know, a group of people in Minnesota are banking hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, it's the same thing that's happening in California with the homeless industrial complex. That whole thing is set up not to solve the problem of homelessness, but to make sure these do-gooder cronies have an open spigot for years and years to come. Because, you know, Gavin Newsom even said, like, we're not really sure what happened with that money. We're not really sure how many homeless people there are in this country. But you can be damn sure that middle-class people in California are being taxed out of the state because they thought they were doing the right thing by checking a box on a ballot measure to help people in need. But those people just get tossed on the street while the money that was funneled to those Somali corrupt a-holes, you know, that goes God knows where.
Yeah. I mean, remember also when Mayor de Blasio left New York City.
And not all Somalis are corrupt a-holes, just for the record.
Just for the record.
Some of
and
them
de
are good
Blasio's wife lost $1 billion that was supposed to be for homeless. And they were like, oh, sorry. And we were not supposed to ask about it. Yeah, mental health.
Tim Walz, he called me far right. He called me a delusional conspiracy theorist. And then he also called me a white supremacist. Yet he can't deny any of the claims. Because when you're speaking facts, these people can't come after you. And so when I was just speaking the facts about fraud is fraud, 89% of the population committing the fraud is Somalian, that does not make me a racist. Dollars have no race to it. It's just a pure fact that money's being stolen from Republicans and Democrats.
So we have seen no denial from Tim Walz at this point. Is that correct?
No denial.
Yeah, that's
a lot of deflecting.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.